You're listening to the ESO Network, your station for all things geek.
Hello, world, and welcome to Tales from Hollywoodland, a veritable feast of movies, television, Broadway, showbiz stories, and even a little bit of news and gossip with Julian Schlossberg, Arthur E. Friedman, and Stephen J. Rubin. And hey, I'm your producer and announcer, Mike Faber. Today we're looking at foreign films. And now, here's Julian.
Hello, and once upon a time in the United States of America, foreign film meant something. They came in subtitles, they weren't dubbed, they were made by some of the greatest filmmakers in the world, names maybe some of you still remember, Ingmar Bergman and Federico Fellini, Francois Truffaut, Akira Kurosawa, many, many others. What was interesting about those movies at the time was that America was not making provocative adult themes by and large. And these were the films that were taking on the society's problems and themes that we were not addressing. But we started to in the 60s, and it changed the way films were made, and foreign film became less important because America finally grew up and started making films with provocative themes. But I'd like to go back and talk about first the amazing amount of foreign movies that were remade as American motion pictures. There are lots of them. But we'll start out with the great Akira Kurosawa from Japan, who made a 3.5-hour movie in black and white called The Seven Samurai. And from The Seven Samurai, we've got The Magnificent Seven. And just on that first film, I'm going to turn it over to my magnificent friend, Steve Rubin, to tell us a little bit about what he knows about The Magnificent Seven.
Well, that's thank you for turning that over to me. I can talk reams about one of my all-time favorite movies. I know that John Sturges, the director, was a big fan of the Kurosawa movie and saw the opportunity. I think actually, I think it was the Marish brothers, maybe even Walter Marish, who may have found the project first and referred it to Sturges. The Magnificent Seven is probably, next to The Wild Bunch and Butch Cassidy, the most famous Western ever produced. Maybe The Searchers is there too. But they took the basic Kurosawa premise. Obviously, they were not going to do a 3.5-hour Western in America. They cut it down to 2 hours, a little over 2 hours. It's a great Western. It is an archetypal Western. And a big box office hit, and it broke a number of American stars, including Steve McQueen, James Coburn, Charles Bronson, and then a young German actor named Horst Buchholz, who had a brief career as the go-to guy. I think following The Magnificent Seven, Billy Wilder hired him to be one of the leads in 1, 2, 3.
So, yes. But Steve, the question is, would Magnificent Seven have been that big a hit without that score, that theme?
Oh, I agree with you. In fact, it's funny you should mention that. I was talking to some friends the other day about when you watch movies when they're being made, obviously there's no soundtrack yet. So sometimes they put a little temp music in, but to watch The Magnificent Seven, all those action scenes without the Elmer Bernstein music, it's a one-dimensional experience. Despite the great performances, I think you're right, Arthur. Elmer Bernstein made that movie, definitely.
Well, we also know that another great Western was made with a score as well, and that was High Noon, which was just a sensation.
Yeah, that was a song, a theme.
Yeah.
Do not forsake me, oh my darling.
No. Hey, by the way, was the Mag 7 theme the Marlboro theme?
Yeah. Well, obviously that was later, of course. The movie came first, and then the Marlboro, absolutely.
Well, another film by Kurosawa, Rashomon, gave its name actually to the Dictionary of America now, because Rashomon is used as everybody having a different side of a story that they see. But that was another Kurosawa film, was remade by Martin Ritt, called The Outrage, with Paul Newman and Claire Bloom, Edward G. Robinson, Lawrence Harvey. So that's another example of film being made. And the first one, Magnificent Seven, was a huge hit. I don't think The Outrage was.
Did Warren Beatty use the theme from the Kurosawa take in Reds?
I don't know.
But there's another.
Reds was he did a similar thing with everybody's different point of view.
That theme.
Yes, not the song.
No, I think maybe. I mean, it was really written by Elaine May and Trevor. I think Trevor Griffith.
Reds was
yeah. The Reds.
Yeah.
Another movie that was remade, this time from Hong Kong, was a film called Internal Affairs and became The Departed. So it's an amazing thing how this seems to continue with this remaking. We know that Three Men and a Baby was originally a French film. Trois Hommes and Un Courant, I think it was called. And it's really interesting to see La Cage aux Folles becomes Birdcage. So it's a real area of remakes where American people decide, well, we better take some good movies from foreign countries and remake them if it makes sense. Spike Lee is now remaking a great Kurosawa film called High and Low. This was a great crime drama that he made, Kurosawa. He's making it with Denzel Washington, and it's a crime film. So we'll be seeing this continuing of using movies from other countries.
Are we all Spike Lee fans?
It depends on the movie, in my case.
Well, give me a movie where you're a fan of his.
I love the movie he did, Ali. I thought it was really well done, as an example. And I love the film with Ozzie Davis that was rather provocative. I just forgot the name for the moment. But
Danny Aiello?
Danny Aiello was in it too, yes. Yeah. Another film that you guys might want to speak about, I don't know if you knew that Billy Wilder's Some Like It Hot is originally a French movie. So as I say, one of the greatest actors of all of Japan is a man named Toshiro Mifune. He and Kurosawa together made 16 movies. And Kurosawa loved, and George Lucas wanted Toshiro Mifune for Obi-Wan Kenobi. He was his first choice. Mifune turned it down, did not want to do it. Mifune had a great feeling about samurais and felt that Lucas was going to be doing a lot of special effects and things that he just didn't want to in any way get involved with a film that did not appreciate how great samurais were. Of course, it turned out that that particular problem didn't exist, but maybe it did in the screenplay that he got. I don't know.
It's funny because his buddy Steven Spielberg hired Mifune to play a submarine commander in that great goofy comedy bomb 1941.
Yes.
Which I always found was funny. He's playing opposite Christopher Lee as this Nazi, and Christopher Lee speaks in German, Mifune speaks in Japanese, and we get the English subtitles. It's just very strange.
You know, there was a movie that was partially a foreign film, and it was a great movie, World War II, and that was where they had the Japanese part of it and the American part of it. But it was a great movie, and all these Japanese great actors were in it. Steve, what was the title of the movie? It was Tora Tora.
Tora.
Great movie.
wasn't about a stutterer, right?
No.
No.
Well, I want to go back to silent days because in my everlasting quest to find new film experiences that I did not get the first time around, I sat down last year and watched Metropolis, the Fritz Lang. Fritz Lang. And I probably have only seen a handful of silent movies in my life. And this has been touted for years as being one of the first science fiction films. And Fritz Lang, they said that if they made that movie today, it would cost $200 million. And it was made, I think, for $5 million in 1927, which obviously was more money than anybody had ever spent on anything. And it is a fascinating movie with an interesting history. A lot of the movie had been lost over the decades, and only found recently in the 2000s when somebody found a 16 millimeter print of the full release, and a lot of it has been restored. But even in the restored works, they juxtapose still frames for still missing footage. But it's a very poetic film and an epic film in many ways about oppression and labor, fighting a super race of elitists. Originally inspired when Fritz Lang came to New York City for the first time and saw all the skyscrapers and the lit up thing. He'd never seen something like that before, and it inspired him to create literally the Metropolis. And I learned also that the guys who created the Superman comic book, Joe Shuster and his buddy, they were so inspired by Metropolis, they decided to name Superman's home city Metropolis.
Huh. Good one.
So I highly recommend anybody who wants to further their film education, find Metropolis. It's not too difficult now. It's online somewhere. And prepare yourself for a feast with terrific accompanying music.
The best silent film I ever saw, a friend of mine's father had in the Bronx. We were about 10 years old, and he found in his top drawer in the bedroom, there were these little silent films that had the same plot. And that was like an encyclopedia salesman comes to the door, all brown socks. And it was like soft porn stuff. All silent. I trust we've all seen those kind of films, but they were silent films in those days. They were made 8 millimeter or something like that.
Well, the great thing about them was every man wore black socks.
Black or brown socks, or garters, or just,
that was the thing.
I'm here to sell you encyclopedias. I'm here.
How did we go from the classicism of Metropolis to nudies?
Because they were silent films.
It's a bit. I would say it's a bit of a stretch. Anyhow, in 1956, the Academy decided to wake up and have a Best Foreign Film category. Up until then, they really didn't much. And one of the incredible things that a producer that I knew well, Joseph E. Levine, did was somehow in 1962, this actress, who only spoke Italian at that point, ended up making a movie called Two Women, and Sophia Loren beat out Audrey Hepburn, beat out some of the greatest actresses in the country for Two Women. She won the Academy Award, and that really skyrocketed her to fame. It's incredible because that was really unheard of up until then.
Quite a film.
Is that a movie that takes place during World War II, Julian? Because I have not seen it.
Yes, it is. It's black and white, takes place in World War II. It's a mother and a daughter. It's a pretty horrendous rape scene. It's quite a movie. It's very powerful.
Well, it's funny because you mentioned Joseph E. Levine. He made a lot of money and a lot of films in Italy featuring muscle men.
Hercules.
Hercules.
Well, he didn't make the movies. He imported them.
He imported
them. Yeah, and he did. He brought in Hercules, and despite what you may read, he was the first person to go wide of any distributor. He did it first. He bought television, and he did it for Hercules. And his philosophy was simple. It's a lousy movie. Let me get him in as quick as I can first week. And
that was a staple for me. I mean, Steve Reeves became like the guy. I remember one of my favorites of his is that he did a remake of Thief of Baghdad with Vittorio De Sico, the famous Italian filmmaker, playing the genie.
Well, Vittorio De Sica was an Italian matinee idol. He was a very famous actor before he became an extraordinary director. And he did The Garden of the Finzi Continis. He did a lot of wonderful movies. I think he did Belle de Jour as well.
Did he ever come on your show?
No, I never. I had Melina Mercuri. I don't know why. It just seems that it flows, the name, and Jules Dassin, but I never had De Sica.
Belle de Jour was a hell of a good movie, real quality film. She Never Looked Better. Whatever her name was.
Never on Sunday. Isn't she also in Topkapi?
Yes. I don't know. Jules Dassin.
That was Melina Mercuri.
Peter Ustinov was this probably Melina Mercuri, Peter Ustinov. I did. De Sica did not do Belle de Jour. That's wrong. It was Buñuel. I think it was Louis
Buñuel.
Yeah, he did. But it's interesting when you think of some of the great American films that were made by people who started out making film in Europe. For example, Roman Polanski made The Knife in the Water in Polish, but then came over here, did Rosemary's Baby, and of course the great Chinatown. Milos Forman did Fireman's Ball and Loves of a Blonde in Czech, it was Czechoslovakian, and then of course Amadeus. And
how many filmmakers fled Germany when Hitler came to power? I mean, there was a whole community in California of these expatriates.
Well, that's right.
You know,
you mentioned Fritz Lang. There's a perfect example.
Exactly.
But Billy Wilder, many. But
Zinnemann.
The difference is their movies didn't play in a foreign language in America.
No.
These guys, Milos, Roman, these guys' films first started out in their own native language and then graduated. So
the girl from Belle de Jour was Catherine Deneuve.
Yes.
She's very beautiful. Some of those films were really good movies, and they did a lot of business in New York and San Francisco and LA and certain markets in America, Boston. They did, really tons of business, good foreign films. There is no foreign film business today.
You know, you talk about everyone has the AI on the mind now. It's affecting virtually every aspect of business. But the way they can now dub is changing the way films are dubbed now. I mean, in the old days, dubbing was a terrible way of making things in English. I think it was just, was unnatural, and the voices didn't match.
You go back and watch Hercules. You want to see some real bad dubbing.
No, it's terrible dubbing. But now apparently it is so technically good that they can change the way the lips move. It looks exactly like what they're saying in a digital format, which makes everything obsolete. Julian, you probably have seen some pretty bad dubbing cases in your days.
Yeah, I certainly did. I did a few. I dubbed a movie with Raul Julia, who, by the way, was a joy to work with. And it was called Tango Bar. It was done in Spanish. And then, of course, he was in it, and he then did the English version. I enjoyed doing that. I actually did it 2 or 3 movies and enjoyed it. Bad dubbing existed like you couldn't believe, because foreign guys would bring in movies and just get it dubbed, and it wasn't that they didn't even bother with lip sync. I mean, people could be talking this way and the voice wasn't there. Then they stopped talking, the voice would come on. I mean, they didn't even match it. It was a mess at one point.
Well, I would have to say that one of the biggest stars of foreign films was a dinosaur named Godzilla.
Yes, absolutely.
Or as the Japanese call him, Gojira. And the gods.
And they made so many of them.
They made a ton of them. I was at the movie theater every week seeing a different form of whether it was Rodan, the flying monster, or Ghidra, the three-headed dragon monster. And then Mike, help me out here. There's probably a bunch of
Mothra.
Mothra, exactly.
How could you forget Mothra?
You also
Little
have
Japanese
the smog.
fairies.
You have the smog monster. You also had Mega Godzilla. Then you had Godzilla versus Kong, and you had a zillion of them. And
You talk about Fraser Ali. I mean, Godzilla Kong. I mean, talk about a battle of titans.
Yeah.
But I wanted to mention, since our topic today is foreign films, one of the best foreign films I've seen is indeed a Godzilla movie. It was released just last year called Godzilla -1.
oh, it was beautiful. It was an
And a
amazing
huge,
film.
probably the highest grossing Godzilla film ever.
Also, the
Ever.
first Godzilla to actually win an Academy Award.
Exactly, for effects.
Yes.
Yes.
Wasn't for acting, Steve.
Not for acting. But however, Julian, if you watch Godzilla -1, setup is very interesting. The lead character is a good performance because he's playing a kamikaze pilot who kind of doesn't want to be a kamikaze. And I could identify with that. I wouldn't want to be one either. And he lands on an island with his plane. And at first, people are looking at him like crazy. Why aren't you like blowing up an American ship out there? And it's a story of how this guy survives and meets a creature we know of as Godzilla. But really beautifully done. Beautifully done.
It's interesting. What do you guys think was the highest grossing foreign film?
Oh boy.
Ooh, that's a good question.
Well, I'll give you a hint. It wasn't a typical foreign film. It had a lot of action in it.
Wow. Okay. A lot of action in a typical, not a typical foreign film. Well, could it be one of the spaghetti westerns?
No.
There was.
I won't keep you in agony any longer. Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Ah.
Wonderful film.
Oh.
Wonderful film.
Terrific movie. A really exciting, wonderful film. I
But
love
you're
it.
not far. You're not far off, Steve, with these spaghetti westerns. Those things did fortunes worldwide. I wanted to mention that the Milton Berle's little attorney, the Jewish leprechaun named Paul Schreibman, was the attorney who represented Toho after World War II, and he made the original Godzilla deal. And to this day, he was involved with all of those subsequent Godzillas with Columbia. He also represented Dick Clark in the first deal made for the Golden Globe Awards.
Oh.
So this guy he had his hands in all these things.
You mentioned the spaghetti westerns, and Yojimbo, again, Kurosawa, was remade as A Fistful of Dollars. So once again, our foreign fellows influence a lot of the movies that we have seen.
Now, getting back to Godzilla for a second, when they acquired the rights to release it in the U.S., they decided to add the Raymond Burr character to give the American audience somebody to root for. So that whole thing with Raymond Burr looking outside his hotel window as Godzilla's ravaging Tokyo was added years after they made the movie, which I thought was interesting.
There's a terrific movie. I'm glad that you talked about Metropolis, Steve. There's a great, great movie that most people think is a documentary, but it's not. It's called The Battle of Algiers, and it's made by a man named Pontecorvo. And it is an extraordinary movie where you do believe that this is documentary, that this is not a movie, but it is a movie. And Marlon Brando was so taken with it that he contacted Pontecorvo, went out and actually made a movie with him, turned down Butch Cassidy, turned down Kazan, the arrangement to make the movie called Burn, B-U-R-N, kind of loosely based on a story that happened in diplomatic circles in Washington versus another a smaller country. But it's an incredible film. And I think, Steve, I've told you and Mike and Arthur that one of my favorite movies is called Children of Paradise. It's considered by many people the greatest movie ever made. Of course, it's in French, and it was made during Vichy government. Very, very hard to make movies there during the Nazi regime. But they made it in 43 and 44 and early 45. It was then released, and it's just an extraordinary movie. Paradis, which we say paradise, is also what the French call the second balcony in a theater. And it's where the people, the real people, the people who are not the blue-collar people, who do not necessarily have the money, but do have the love of theater. And Children of Paradise takes place in this kind of atmosphere in Paris in the 1830s. A beautiful courtesan is wooed by four men, and she's able to handle all four of them. It's made by a man named Marcel Carné, and 50 years after it was made and released in 45, 600 French film critics voted it the best film ever made.
Wow.
Wow.
So it's also considered the French Gone with the Wind. That to me is a bit of a stretch, but shows Jerry Lewis with them. So I have to be careful. Anyhow, Children of Paradise, I recommend it highly. Criterion, the company Criterion was able to, because it was all difficult to get it, put it together, and now they have a gorgeous version out. So I hope people who are interested in movies will see Children of Paradise.
I'm definitely putting it on my list.
It's interesting because, also one of the early foreign films for me that I remember seeing in, I think it was late high school or early college, was a movie called Cinema Paradiso. And it was, about a film projectionist and his love for the movies and wanting to pass it on to a young boy into the village. And it was just such a good movie.
It was one of the great movies ever made.
Yeah. It was just,
Loved it.
It was just such a fun, it was fun. It was good. Today, there'd be like people going, oh, is this, older man trying to come on to the boy or something? It had nothing to do with that at all. It was innocent. It was wonderful. And it was a pure joy movie.
And it would appeal to anyone who loves movies.
Yes.
That's what it did. And it
A
was
beautiful film with beautiful music by Ennio Morricone. What a score. Guys, I was interrupted by a power failure here in Southern Florida. We're talking about this movie Godzilla with Raymond Burr, who they added in. Well, the same people, Roger Corman, little Paul Schreibman from Toho, put together a movie called Tidal Wave, which is essentially the same movie. And the person they added was Lorne Greene, who was the broadcaster, screaming, "There's a tidal wave coming!" And all it was a bunch of Japanese people running all over the place with rain. And the ad was so good they used a box of Tide to indicate the tidal wave, and it worked for 1 week. It did a lot of business, and then it was over. But it was the same group that did the Godzilla. And
there was just like Clint Eastwood going over to Spain to work on these Italian westerns, the spaghetti westerns. American actors would go to Japan and appear in these science fiction movies. I remember Vic Morrow, after he finished Combat in '67, he went over to Japan and made a couple of science fiction movies, as did Russ Tamblyn. So there was a little market for American actors in these science fiction movies.
Yeah, and huge stars, giant American stars who would never do a commercial in America would go to Japan, do the commercial, pick up a lot of money as long as it only played in Japan.
Japan, sure.
But, we haven't discussed the great Fellini. We haven't discussed the great Bergman. We haven't discussed the great Truffaut. We're talking about magnificent men who made great movies. Ingmar Bergman must have made at least, I don't know, 15, 20 movies, many of them a masterpiece. His father was a priest, so that was certainly affected his way of looking at the world. And very, very, very fine movies. But boy, oh wow, you had to have an IQ to understand a lot of those films.
Pretty
And it had to be
depressing.
high.
Yeah,
Well, I wanted to further my education a few months ago, so I sat down and I watched Fellini's 8.5. Now, Fellini to me has always been almost an adjective in the movie business for very colorful filmmaking with lots of faces, lots of different types of characters, a carnival atmosphere. I had no idea what that meant until I sat down and I watched 8.5. And in the course of this movie, which is actually a filmmaking movie, it's about a director and trying to create his masterpiece while dealing with various and sundry affairs and wives, etc. But there's like 2,000 people in this movie, and they're all popping out of every corner of the frame. There's no scene with just one person or two people. He packs people in there, and it is kind of a circus atmosphere. And Julian, who I'm sure has seen all of Fellini's great films, tell me if that is a trait of Fellini.
The thing about Fellini that unless you know his background, it's hard to understand a lot of his movies. He was a man who would write in notebooks his dreams. As we all have dreams, we don't generally record them, but he did. And so when you're watching the movie, it's like watching often a dream where things make no sense, at least logically. But this is what some of his genius was.
and the sound of the screening room was snoring when his movies were playing. He and Bergman, people would fall asleep, and they would snore, and that's how you'd hear the movie.
Well, occasionally he would make, he being Fellini, a movie like Roma, and Roma was a beautiful kind of picture all about the great city of Rome, and it wasn't a difficult film to follow, and he could do that if he wanted to, but his choice was to get involved with the dreams, and that's what his movies were. Bergman, on the other hand, would take very cool, tough subjects, but my God, he'd had Max von Sydow, who became an American actor as well, wonderful in Hannah and Her Sisters and 3 Days of the Condor, besides the great Bergman movies. Liv Ullmann, who came over and became a movie star for a while. So he had some of his people became very, very well known.
I found it interesting, Julian, in researching a little bit of 8.5, that the title of the movie was the fact that Fellini had previously made 8.5 movies.
Yes, that's right.
I'd like to mention Truffaut. I believe I'm correct. Did Truffaut do the original Breathless? Was that a Truffaut?
I think that was Godard.
Oh, was that Godard? Okay, Jean-Luc Godard. Yeah. But Breathless with I was very interested in Gene Seberg. Gene Seberg. The only movie I'd ever seen Gene Seberg in was the 1970 movie Airport, where she played the
wife.
No, she's not the wife. She's Burt Lancaster's paramour, but she helps him run the airport. And his wife was played by Donna Winter, actually, who's in the process of getting rid of him. But I wanted to see, they always say Breathless is the beginning of Gene Seberg's career. And she was absolutely delightful, playing opposite, I believe, Jean-Paul Belmondo.
Yes.
And I remember Belmondo being such a James Bond nut that Belmondo had appeared in a movie, a French film, I believe it's a French film, called That Man from Rio. Yes, which was a lot of fun.
To this moment in time, I never knew that Gene Seberg was in the airport. How about that?
Yeah.
It's her, huh?
Gene Seberg was brought over to America by Otto Preminger, and she was going to play, and did play, in Saint Joan, about Joan of Arc. And it was not a successful movie. But then she went on to have a bit of a career. She got sadly involved for her with the Black Panther movement. She believed in it a lot, and she got really criticized for it and died quite young under suspicious circumstances. So, but she was a lovely actress, and she made some other movies I can't think of. You guys could look up or we could talk about, but she was a fine actress.
Didn't she make Saint Joan?
Yeah, I just said that.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, exactly. The French were collaborative with the Nazis, unfortunately, especially in the Vichy part of France. But they sure made a lot of great films about the Holocaust. And many of them were documentaries. And the one you hear most about is the Sorrow and the
Sorrow and the Pity.
Sorrow and the Pity. Woody Allen references it in Annie Hall, giving it a lot of viewpoint there. But Sorrow and the Pity was a very, very lengthy documentary about the Holocaust. And I must confess I've not seen the whole thing, but you probably have, Julian.
I have. It was 7.5 hours. So that was it for the day. And very harrowing movie, beautifully made.
Devastating.
And, but certainly one that Arthur would not see. I know.
How big, just on a historical note, how big a movement was Vichy France? Was that a big movement?
Well, they when you say a movement, it was the government of France during
They conspired
the
with Nazi Germany.
Yeah, that part of France was considered a puppet government of the Nazis. And if you were Jewish and got caught in Vichy France, that was it. I think.
Now, what part of France was that, Steve?
I believe it was southern France, on the road to Marseille. I believe.
Really?
Well, when speaking of France, one of the great impressionist painters was, of course, Renoir. But he had a son, and his son was a brilliant filmmaker who made movies like Grand Illusion, Rules of the Game, an incredible movie called The River, his first Technicolor film, all done in India. But Renoir, like his father, was a great artist. Grand Illusion was a true anti-war movie about French soldiers in World War I, captured, prisoners of war. And Rules of the Game was kind of a takeoff, a satire on the French in the countryside. But he was a brilliant filmmaker. And when there was a time when films were being shown, Rules of the Game and Grand Illusion were always showing in revival theaters when I started in the business. But of course, now they're not even known, most likely, by people.
As scary a movie as I've ever seen was a little French film called Diabolique.
Yes, it was. And the ending, we will not tell, but oh my God. I think
what
the
a
only other
scary
time
movie. Whoa.
was Fatal Attraction. And interestingly enough, they both take place in the bathtub. But,
right.
Yeah.
Well, a filmmaker I've always admired because he seems to get the location becoming a character in his films. So Jean-Jacques Annaud, I believe, is French and certainly known for a number of different films. But more recently, in 2022, I went to the French Film Festival in LA. They have a French Film Festival in LA. And for those of you who are interested in what caused the fire that nearly destroyed Notre Dame, this is a movie called Notre Dame on Fire. And it goes in, it's not a documentary per se, because there are people playing some key characters, but it talks about using the real footage. It talks about what led to the fire and how they fought the fire. I found it very interesting to know that part of the difficulty of fighting the fire at Notre Dame was the fact that it was in the afternoon during the rush hour and the fire trucks couldn't get to Notre Dame. All those streets were like gridlock. So they had a late start on getting that fire under control, but a group of extraordinary people got together to preserve the artwork inside, because obviously not only the structure is historic, but there was a lot of artwork that had to be saved. But I recommend Notre Dame on Fire by Jean-Jacques Annaud.
I wanted to tell, we had mentioned the Sika before, and I wanted to tell a story. I had a couple of theaters in Bennington, Vermont, and there was a De Sica movie that I opened in New York called Briefication with Florinda Balkan, and we were killing them. And I thought, well, Bennington, college town, we're going to do great. These were small marquees, and so we advertised. And when I called up for the first day gross, no one came. And I said to the manager, what happened? He said, I think the title, people think the theater's on a brief vacation. And that was the story of De Sica's brief vacation in Bennington.
I'm glad the next feature wasn't closed for renovation.
No. That wasn't the sequel. However, I told him no matter how to put up De Sica's brief vacation. Change the marquee, whatever you do. I mentioned Kurosawa before, but it's interesting that this extraordinary filmmaker, one of the greatest that ever lived, and we've mentioned a lot of his movies already and how they were remade, but he also went the other way. He took films of Shakespeare, of plays of Shakespeare, and he did a film on King Lear called Ran, R-A-N, a brilliant movie, maybe his greatest. He took Macbeth and he made Throne of Blood. So he actually took Hamlet and made a movie I forgot the name of, but that was not successful the way Throne of Blood and Ran was. But it's interesting that it went sometimes the other way. Not often, but occasionally.
Well, one movie that I was very impressed with, especially when I found out how much they had to make the movie, was this Dutch film, Soldier of Orange, which pretty much introduced Rutger Hauer to American audiences, and certainly Ridley Scott saw him in that and grabbed him up to play Roy Batty in the great movie with Harrison Ford called Blade Runner. But Soldier of Orange is actually based on a true story. It was based on the life of this gentleman who, with his college buddies, found themselves in Holland, specifically Amsterdam, when the Germans invaded. And it follows the adventures of these 6 friends and what happens to them, one of whom is Jewish, who's a young boxer, and Rutger Hauer and his friend, played by the great Dutch actor Jeroen Krabbe, who James Bond fans will remember as being one of the villains in the Timothy Dalton movie, The Living Daylights. But it's a fascinating film directed by Paul Verhoeven, who has been all over the map in so many different types of movies. He did Starship Troopers, he did Showgirls, but Soldier of Orange is a masterpiece with a great deal of scope, and yet was made for only a little over $3.5 million in 1977 dollars. And it's an epic movie. Rutger Hauer is just terrific. And
he really came to be known in America in his first movie over here was called Turkish Delights. I was trying to think of that before we went on the air.
Which is a sexy movie, right, Julian?
Oh, yeah. And I think, wasn't he the villain in Nighthawks with Stallone?
Yes, exactly. He played the terrorist, and very, very, very good. I always liked Rutger Hauer. He had the movie star good looks, but he had some good acting chops as well.
Yes.
You guys remember a movie called Life is Beautiful?
Sure.
Life is Beautiful.
Roberto Benigni, I think he won the Academy Award.
That's right. In fact, I think when he won the award in the audience, he jumped up and like 25 people caught him, and he like went to the front of the theater on the hands. All these people who got him.
Oh, it was the back of the chairs, Steve.
Oh, the back of the chairs.
He stepped on each row. He didn't go out on the aisle. He just stepped on the chairs and won. I met him in Italy, and I really liked him. He was a lovely guy, very, very funny.
How you could find comedy in a story about concentration camps is quite a endeavor. But yet,
Well,
that
he
was
found
brilliant.
before the comedy, he found there was that hook that led to the comedy, but the hook of trying to have his son believe that this, it wasn't really happening, that he tried to paint a whole different life was amazing. There was another little film at that time called The Boy in the Striped Pajamas. Did we all see that, guys?
Yeah, it's a harrowing movie. It's a harrowing movie.
Oh, boy.
Il Postino, the postman.
Yes.
Great movie with the girl. Oh, she was great.
What a terrific film that was. And our little boy, Harvey Weinstein, the Miramax brought in those movies. Cinema.
What was the actress's name in that film? Julian. Il Postino. She was incredible.
Yes.
I will tell you the name of that person in 2 seconds because we need to know it. I think she also showed up in a James Bond movie. Hang on.
She sure should have.
Well, if they look great, they show up in a James Bond movie.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so here it is, and I was wrong. It's yes. No, I was right. She's in the Bond movie. Her name is Maria Grazia Cucinato.
Yes.
And she is played in the very early part of one of the Pierce Brosnan movies called The World Is Not Enough. And she played the cigar girl who leads Bond on a merry chase down the Thames in The World Is Not Enough. But she's the star along with the male lead, whose name was Massimo Troisi. And that was Il Postino.
Hell of a movie. Now, I saw, as I mentioned before, talking about foreign films, in 1957, as early as you could possibly get, I saw And God Created Women, the thing that brought about Brigitte Bardot, French film. Not a very good movie, but it did make a difference. She was magic.
Magic. And we ran to the Ascot Theater to see that movie in the Bronx. And boy, that did not
go by the Ascot Theater and get hot. That's how great that theater was.
Now, I haven't seen this movie, but I'll mention it because it gets mentioned a lot and was a staple in a lot of revival houses. Costa Gavras made a movie called Z.
Of course.
A political thriller.
Yes.
Julian, what do you remember about Z?
Oh, it was a terrific film. Yves Montand was the star.
Great movie.
And it was a terrific film. Arthur may have distributed it in New England. Did you, Arthur?
We did.
I thought you did, yeah. He also made a film in America that was terrific called Missing with Jack Lemmon and Sissy Spacek.
I just watched it last week for the first time.
It's a terrific film. It holds up, doesn't it, Steve?
It does. It's harrowing. It's interesting because I remember her husband, Sissy's husband, is played by John Shea, and I actually got a chance to work with John Shea. He played the villain in that great classic, Honey, I Blew Up the Kid.
The sequel or the real one, Steve?
That was the sequel to Honey, I Shrunk.
Yes, of course.
Yes.
You guys know a movie called La Ventura?
Sure, I do.
That was a biggie.
Yeah, it did well
for its
films.
Time.
Yeah, Antonioni had his biggest film was Blow Up. That was the film that met his big film.
That was United Kingdom, wasn't it? That was England. Blow Up.
Yeah, David Hemmings.
One of the films we should talk about before we wrap up is the film that actually won Best Picture. That was a foreign film and foreign language film. It was Parasite.
Right.
From Korea.
Which I found to be an absolutely riveting film. And I'll confess, I don't generally like to read subtitles because they, especially in dialogue-heavy movies where there's a lot of words coming at you. But this movie...
It kept you on your toes the whole time.
Kept you on your toes and with wonderful performances.
It was...
And did over $50 million in America. So it was a big success.
I'd also like to mention one movie from 1980 from South Africa, which got a lot of attention, called The Gods Must Be Crazy.
Oh, the guy loses the Coke bottle from his airplane.
And
Terrific film.
Yep.
Played over a year in New York City at the 68th Street Playhouse. Just kept going. It was
Kept on
amazing.
Was that Ian McKellen?
No.
No.
that was a no-name cast.
Yeah, the Coke was the big name.
Yeah,
They actually, the
Coca-Cola
people
was
on the
big
ground,
name in it.
the natives thought it was a gift from God. So there you go. There you go.
And
Well, it was for American capitalism.
That's true. That's true.
What country was Blow Up? Was Blow Up England?
It was shot in England, but it was
but
Antonioni.
Antonioni, of course, was Italian. We had a very obscure little movie, obscure, but did a ton of business that nobody's heard of, called Dough, Dough, which had to do, it took place in France, in Paris. And it's about an older Jewish man who owns a bakery that is failing. He hires an African kid from Africa who, by mistake, empties his pocket, and it falls. What's in his pocket is marijuana, and it falls into the dough that he makes bagels with. And people start lining up at this store at 4:00 in the morning. He becomes such a hit with, dough.
It's probably a little bit of a remake of Monkey Business with Cary Grant and Marilyn Monroe and
Yes.
Ginger Rogers, where the monkey puts the formula for youth in the water cooler. There you go. There you
Right.
go. Before we end, I want to mention the How All Quiet on the Western Front remake of recent, the German film, which is a grueling and harrowing, a word I'm using a lot today, story about fighting on the front of World War I in France, based on, of course, the famous book by Eric Maria Remarque, which was done in the 1930s by Louis Milestone. But this was such a harrowing movie. My nickname for it is Blood and Mud.
another one I want to talk about, Steve, before we get out of here, is a movie called Pan's Labyrinth. It is an amazing film, and it's Guillermo del Toro who did the film, and it won Best Foreign Film, but it is so groundbreaking, and it's just so beautiful. And it's done from a young child's view during World War II. And it was just the representation of, what was happening in Spain during the war. It was just awesome. And, the fantasy.
And very successful,
Yes.
Surprisingly. Very successful. Yeah.
What was the title, Mike?
Pan's Labyrinth.
Pan's Labyrinth. Yes. I've heard that. Isn't that the one where the people are standing at the bar and they turn into insects?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Is there such a thing as the Gone with the Wind of foreign films? And there was some stick out incredible movie.
Well, that's what they call Children of Paradise. The French.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
Yeah, they actually call it that. The French Gone with the Wind.
I know you love that movie, yeah.
Oh, I do. While you were in your outage, as opposed to your dotage, while you were in your outage, I talked about it.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I'll listen to the show.
Well, I think we're about to turn it over to Mike. I believe, Mike. It's now in your capable hands.
Oh my God, my hands! Oh gosh, I might as well put in a foreign quote or something right there if you want me to. But thank you very much for joining us tonight, folks. You've reached the end of this episode of the Tales from Hollywoodland podcast. Always remember, we couldn't do this without you. We want to hear from you, so please write us anytime at talesfromhollywoodland@gmail.com. Remember, you can find us wherever fine podcasts are found, and now you can even find us up on our YouTube channel. If you made it this far into the episode, why not subscribe and give us a thumbs up? Or if you're listening to us, please give us 5 stars. If you're into social media, please check us out on Instagram and Facebook. Before we get out of here, let's check with the guys and see what's happening over on their shows. Julian, who are you talking to this week?
This week is Jamie Bernstein, Leonard Bernstein's oldest child, and she tells a lot of wonderful stories, including talking about the young people's concerts that her father did that she was involved with, and talking also about why he did not like the movie West Side Story, which was surprising to hear. And there was a very famous article by Thomas Wolfe, who wrote about a Black Panther meeting in the Bernstein house and how that changed his life. So it's a rather interesting story by a woman that has a lot to say, including about the movie that was made about her father, Maestro.
Wonderful.
Julian, did she say why he didn't like West Side Story?
She certainly did.
I'm not going to squeal. You have to listen to it to find out.
I definitely will be listening.
Or as they say, spoilers.
Yeah, that's right. Spoiler alert.
Exactly. Steve, what do you got going over on Saturday night at the movies?
I have the wonderful comedy writers Lowell Gans and Babaloo Mandel, who wrote most of the great comedies of the 80s and 90s, including Splash, City Slickers, Parenthood, A League of Their Own, Night Shift, and they were absolutely delightful. Their personal favorite is Parenthood, but we talk a little bit about the nature of American comedy and where it's gone. And by the way, I should say this, since it did happen this past weekend, Naked Gun did open and did some business. So
not much.
Oh, Arthur, don't quibble. I basically, as a comedy writer, I'm happy somebody went to the movies and laughed. I went Sunday with my wife and she laughed, which was nice.
All right.
That is awesome. Arthur.
Was it crowded, Steve?
It was crowded.
Arthur, what do we got going on our show next time?
Our next show is going to be about Sean Connery.
Ooh.
We're going to dissect this gentleman's his career. What a great actor. What a great movie star. Apart from the James Bond movies, he's had an amazing career. But Sean Connery became something bigger than life. He was something more than a movie star. He was in the ethos of the world. And so we're talking about Sean Connery next time out.
That is awesome. On behalf of Steve, Arthur, and Julian, thanks again for listening. This is your producer and announcer, Mike Faber. We will see you next time here on Tales from Hollywoodland. Your Hollywood adventure starts right here.
Everyone these days could use a little support, and your friends at the ESO Network are no different. With the ESO Network Patreon, the cool thing is when you help support us, it's you who will benefit. With 4 tiers starting for as little as 25 cents a week, you can listen to some of your favorite network podcasts early, hear exclusive content, maybe get some ESO swag, or even possibly take a shot at the geek seat. All you need to do is sign up at patreon.com/ESO Network.
This has been a broadcast of the ESO Network. Be part of the crew and help support our shows by donating to our ESO Patreon or by shopping at the TeePublic store, which can all be found at www.esonetwork.com. The ESO Network, your station for all things geek.